Obesity is the most talked about issue in the world right now. A lot of them talk about obesity as a cosmetic concern. I want to look fit, I want to look hot, I want to look sexy, I want to look slim. That exactly is why the problem what we are facing right now. Though we wanted to look fit and skinny and nice, we end up having a lot of trouble with it. So obesity has to be seen much more differently. What exactly obesity is? Obesity is accumulation of body fat beyond the normal standards. You can be slim but still can be considered obese if the fat percentage is more than the muscle percentage. So obesity is not just about the scale weight alone. It's about the percentage of share between the muscle mass, bone mass and the fat mass that constitutes obesity. That's why the measure of obesity is not just in the scales. What we call as a BMI or the body mass index is one of the indicator. You take your height, take your weight and have a calculation where we get the BMI. But we also see the percentage of muscle, the percentage of fat, what we call as a waist circumference, hip circumference. With that we calculate waist hip ratio, because waist hip ratio, if it is more than 1, that means there is a lot of fat within the abdomen or the organs, which is going to cause you much more trouble like diseases, what we call as a metabolic syndrome. So obesity is a complex issue which has to be addressed by defining it and analyzing and diagnosing it. Then we have something called staging of obesity. If you are 5 kilos overweight, 10 kilos overweight, we call ourselves just overweight. In this category, nothing changes. Maybe you are eating more or you are exercising less, or there is some kind of a basic problem for a woman, maybe young woman with the period issues or some thyroid issues to both men and women, maybe little bit stressful, you are not sleeping well. These kind of small issues can increase your weight for some time. But once you cross that 8 to 10 kilos, then that is where we define these people as obese. So when we talk about obesity, it's considered a disease. Why is it considered a disease? With obesity, that is 10 kilos overweight, the body function changes. First, it stops or reduces your metabolism. So if you are spending about 1500 calories a day, you spend only 1300 calories. So that kind of a 200 kilocalorie of a negative balance you have, that negative balance will store us more fat. So in spite of you doing the same routine work, eating the same food, doing the same activity, sleeping the same time, going to the same work, you tend to increase your weight slowly. That is why it is called a disease. Any disease is called a disease because it's a progressive issue with symptoms and signs. So now we call this type of obesity as a moderate obesity, where the people will have between 10 and 20 kilos overweight. Then comes the second stage of obesity called the severe obesity, where it's between 20 to 35 kilos overweight. What happens here is not just the metabolism, the organs start functioning less. So what happens is your secretions of hormones, organs all come down. When that come down, metabolism comes down still. And if at all you have a family history of diabetes, family history of hypertension, cholesterol, you tend to develop that. These are called metabolic syndromes. So you develop metabolic syndromes along with your metabolism coming down, or the calorie expenditure coming down, in the severe obesity category if you have a family history. Then comes the third category, or the morbid obesity, where you are 35-40 kilos and above overweight. This is called morbid per se because this reduces your lifespan by 6 to 8 years. So if you are supposed to live 80 years, you are going to live only 70 years. So that is going to be a problem. Second problem is disease-free life. They always say 90% of your life you have to be disease free to be having a good quality. You will have only 50-60% of your life as a disease free life. That means if you are living 70 years, by 35-40 you will start having a disease if you are morbidly obese. So disease free life is less, your life expectancy comes down, but the biggest problem is your quality of life. Joint pain comes early, you have a hard of breathing when you walk few steps, then you cannot sleep well, stressful for all, become sedentary. This kind of a quality of life comes down drastically, and a disease is a guarantee. Sugar, BP, cholesterol, thyroid, PCOD, infertility, so many diseases becomes a guarantee if you have morbid obesity. That is why obesity has to be considered very seriously, and the consequence of these diseases that comes along with it is more dangerous than obesity per se. However, when you talk about people who are slim and then having this disease, you watch them carefully, you analyze them carefully, you see they have less muscle and more fat. Even though they look slim, they have more fat, or they eat so unhealthy, they develop nutritional deficiencies also. So it's a double-edged weapon. Looking fit, looking slim is not the criteria. You can be still a bit overweight, but you can be more stronger and healthy as well. So obesity is not standardized by the way you look, it is by the way the body reacts to the composition of muscle, bone and fat what you have in you. And another big problem with obesity is the big tummy, called as the central obesity. You will be slim looking, fit looking, everything is alright, but you have only a tummy. That's also one of the ways we say you are obese, because you are visceral obesity. That's why we divide body into different parts. Are you obese in your hand? Are you obese in your chest, upper body? Are you obese in your abdomen? Or obese in your thighs? Every part, if it is above your body standards, we still call you obese, not necessarily how you look as such. Especially when you are talking about visceral obesity or central obesity, the more tummy you have, the more chance of you developing metabolic syndromes, and invariably in few years you become obese as well. Another issue is childhood obesity. The biggest problem what we face in this generation is childhood obesity. We in India have more than 25-30% of our pediatric population being obese. If you are obese as a child, there is a 95% possibility you are morbidly obese as an adult. That means you may be 10 kilos obese as a child, but when you become an adult, you can be 40-50 kilos obese. So childhood obesity is very dangerous, and this can lead to infertility, lot of stress, emotional problems, and morbid obesity with bad quality of life and early development of diseases. As I told you before, this disease-free life comes down to 50%. That is, half your life you spend as a diseased person. So childhood obesity is very dangerous and has to be seriously taken. And this is the reason why obesity is not a personal issue, it is a social issue. From schools, good activities, good sports, good food has to be very important. That's why in the West nowadays you see schools take responsibility of children's food during the daytime. If at home we start with the high calorie food for breakfast, high calorie food for lunch, that is not good for a growing child. Of course, they have to eat everything, but not necessarily carbohydrate based and fat based. You go to a school nowadays, the school cafeteria has pizza, pastas, noodles, burgers and samosas. They don't have anything healthy, everything unhealthy, because kids love it, they give chocolates. So you are feeding the kids because you want to keep them happy, not keep them healthy. It starts there. We don't see schools nowadays with playgrounds in our country. All playgrounds have become buildings, concrete structures. We don't see playgrounds. Schools and colleges should not be given permission without playgrounds. Unfortunately, we don't have PT period. We grew up having a PT period once a day. We have hardly a PT period. No schools have sports. If you want to have sports, you do it 5 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock after you leave the school. Where does the kids have time to spend for themselves, time to spend with the family? So it starts from school. Make it a culture. With this, obesity has to be prevented and eradicated. If not, you end up being a disease country. And the issue is this: now India is the fourth largest country with obesity. In absolute number, we are the number one. Second largest country with people with diabetes. Second largest country with people with hypertension. And by 2030 to 35, we might become the most unhealthiest country, being number one in population, number one in obesity, number one in diabetes, number one in hypertension. This is a shameful scenario for us if we don't look at obesity seriously. Let the consequence be controlled, obesity be controlled for having a good quality of life.